Quiet pretty quick. We're live. Good. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:01 p.m. Tuesday, November 26, 2024. And we'll call the session of West Hants Regional Municipality to order. We'll begin the evening with attendance. Clerk Snare.
Mayor Zabian,
Present.
Councillor Yonich,
Here.
Councillor McLean,
Here.
Councillor Remy, here, Councillor Whedon,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Debbie Francis, here, Councillor Bob Morton,
Present.
Councillor Leary Pinch,
Present.
Councillor Paul Morton,
Present.
Councillor John Smith,
Present.
Councillor Bonnie Smith, here, Councillor Ivy.
Present.
Thank you very much, Clerk Snare. We are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and these lands are governed by the treaties of peace and friendship signed in 1726. We're all treated people and have responsibilities to each other and this land. West Hants Regional Municipality also recognizes that African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. Welcome, everybody. For those of you outside the room, come on in. Anybody in here, if there's a couple of empty chairs, just please help direct them there. In case of a fire alarm, we do have 2 exits at either side of us here in the room. Please make your way out in an orderly fashion if any alarms do go off. To my left or your right, into the parking lot, there's a muster station. Please be safe, help each other in case of alarm. Hopefully there's none, but if there are, we'll blame Councillor Yanish this evening. With that as well, folks, this weekend, Sunday, is Hants County Christmas Angels, a very big fundraiser that helps numerous families and individuals in our community. Please tune in. It's at the Avenue High School. If there's a donation or anything, please reach out to the committee. Reach out to us. We'll help guide you in the right direction. But they're a wonderful group, completely volunteer, and they do some great stuff. Also tonight, we have a few new councillors and some new people that we don't recognize in the room. For all votes, we're going to use these little clicker systems. So when a vote comes on, you're going to see it go up on the screen. I'll help guide you for tonight's meeting. If you're voting yes, you're going to click your green button. If you're going to vote no, click your red button. Once you do click one or the other, it's done. Your vote is recorded and there's no changing your mind. So be sure you're going to click the right one. With that, any other announcements this evening from council? Councillor Morton.
Just remind people that on December the 5th, Festoon is happening in Hantsport from 5 to 8. It's a shopping party. Santa Claus will be there and Chili Willy.
Chili Willy and Santa. Councillor Bob Morton.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to congratulate John, Councillor Smith and his team at Dykeland Lodge. They had a very successful evacuation exercise, and I was happy to be part of that as an observer. So congratulations to John and his team. It went flawlessly.
Perfect. Councillor Leary Pinch.
Just to remind everybody that this Saturday, November 30th, is the Santa Drive-By out in Vaughan and the tree lighting at the hall.
Perfect. Santa everywhere. So you can't go wrong. Anything further, council? All right, seeing nothing, we are at the approval of the agenda, including additions or deletions. We do have our dashboard items that are in the package there, folks. With that, before we get into anything from council, we are going to move up an item here. So 12B, Planning Heritage Advisory Committee recommendations, 439 Clifton Avenue. We're going to make that the new number 9 right after public hearings. And then every other item beyond that will just be shifted down a number. I think that was the only change on my end.
Can you
Anything
repeat that,
from-
Mayor Zabian, the move
Sure.
on that?
What was that? Sorry.
Can you just repeat the move on that? We're moving.
Yep. So we're gonna move planning PAC recommendations. So Part B, 439 Clifton Avenue Development Agreement. We're gonna make that the new number 9, and then everything beyond them, we're just gonna shift the numbers down 1.
So is that both of them or just the one?
Just the 1 from that item. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from council? Anything on the dashboard items? Councilor Ivy? No. All right. With that, we'll look for approval of the meeting, the agenda. Moved by Deputy Councilor Morton. Is there a seconder? Councilor Yanish. We'll put that vote up on the screen there, Clerk Snare, just to get the first practice one in order. You guys can place your votes. We can close the votes. Motion's passed. Thank you very much, everybody. Any declarations of conflict of interest this evening? Council, Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Mayor, I'm going to call a conflict on 6F, the minutes of September 24th, and 12B7. I own land in the area.
All right. I'm going to declare on the same two items for the same reason, folks. Any further declarations? All right. Thank you very much. Next up, approval of the previous meeting minutes. We're going to do the lot with the exception of F, and then we'll come back to that just for efficiency's sake. So September 24, 2024, council meeting minutes part 1, September 26, council minutes part 2, October 8th, special council meeting minutes, continuation of September 26th meeting part 3, special council meeting minutes on the 5th of November, September 24th, public hearing minutes, Water Street Development Agreement, PID 45056926. September 24th, public hearing minutes, 4859 Highway 1 3 Mile Plains, PID 45016763. And public hearing minutes from September 24th, Windsor Back Road, PID 45402831. Those were circulated in your packages. If there's any changes or additions or anything to them, we'll take them now. If not, we'll look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Paul Morton,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Larry Pinch. We'll put that vote up on the screen there. Clerk Snare. Place your votes. Thank you very much. Motion's passed. All right, I'll step out on this one. Councillor Paul Morton, you can just do it from yours for ease and
Looking for approval of the previous meeting minutes for 2024 05 or 0924 PH minutes, 1781 King Street, Windsor, PID 45162005 and PID 45408374. Moved by Councillor Morton. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Yanish. Want to throw the vote up there for us, please, Deanna? Motion passed. Thank you very much.
all right. Thank you, Councillor Morton. All right, public hearings. We have 2 public hearings this evening, Council. First one is Eller's House Wind Farm Expansion Development Agreement. I'll take a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Morton, Paul, seconded by Deputy Mayor. We'll put that vote up on the screen. It's just to get used to it. Motion passed. Thank you very much, everybody. So public hearings for development agreements are required by the Municipal Government Act, Part 8. Public hearing gives the opportunity for the applicant to present the application and for staff to follow suit. It gives the public an opportunity to make questions or give comments on the file as well. So tonight, once the public hearing is complete, folks, council will then resume its session and we'll have debate and make questions and comments as well. So our first one this evening is Eller's House Wind Farm Expansion Development Agreement. We'll start with Planner Dunphy.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start just by going through our public hearing agenda for tonight. So this will be the same for all of our public hearings tonight. We've had our intro done by the mayor. We'll move into the presentation by the planner. That'll be myself tonight. Once I'm done my presentation, I'll pass it back to the chair and we'll move on to the presentation by the applicant. That's Julia Cushing in this case. And then after their presentation, we'll move into the public comment period. So any comments or questions from the public. And then following that, we'll move on to questions from council. So those are specifically questions about the file, asking about any information. No discussion on voting. That would be reserved for after the conclusion of the public hearing at second reading. And so that's the agenda for our public hearing or public hearings tonight. So this application is the Ellers House 3 Wind Project Development Agreement. A completed application was received on March 20th, 2024 from Julia Cushing of Potentia Renewables, Inc. And the application is for a development agreement to permit 12 turbines to expand the existing Ellers House wind farm. So here you can see a view of the project area. Currently, there are 10 existing turbines. Those are all pictured outside of the blue circle here. And the 12 new proposed turbines are all within that blue circle. All the turbines are over 1 kilometer from homes and at least 550 meters to any cabins. And turbines are all located on private forestry company-owned lands. So in regards to the environmental assessment, it was submitted for the project for the Provincial Environmental Assessment Review in May of 2023. And the Provincial Minister of Environment and Climate Change approved the project in July of 2023. There were also some conditions relating to this, including water resources, habitat, flora and fauna, air, noise, and visual impacts, complaint resolution plans, contingency plan, and a decommissioning plan. All project information may be found on the Nova Scotia Environment and Climate Change website, and I've provided the link below here. So looking at the ortho photo, we've got 14 PIDs and a portion of 2 additional PIDs. So 14 entire PIDs and 2 partial PIDs. This covers approximately 2,350 acres in total area. And the lots are primarily cleared forestry land abutting Ponick Lake. So you can see Ponick Lake to the west. The lands are owned by Atlantic Star Forestry, leased by Wagner Forestry, and subleased by Potentia Renewables, Inc. The current designation, as per the generalized future land use map for the West Hants Municipal Planning Strategy, is the resource designation. So that is for the entirety of the project area. There is a small portion of hamlet to the north. That's the darker brown up at the top of the map. And that would be the Ellers House community up there. Next for zoning, the entire project area is within the general resource zone. This zone prioritizes resource uses and also allows some rural residential and commercial uses as well. The other zones that you see on the index of the map up here are included up in Ellers House as well. So the entire project area is just that general resource zone. So for the first of the policies that we looked at for this application, we have policy 4.24.4. This enables council to consider installations of large wind turbines or wind farms by development agreement. In summary, the criteria here are met since the proposed development has received environmental assessment approval from the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. The conditions to the environmental assessment approval ensure that adequate separation distances are maintained from adjacent land uses to minimize the impacts of noise and shadow to ensure public safety. Based on the visualizations, the proposed development appears reasonably suited for the resource context of the area, and the developer is working directly with the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works to ensure all necessary work is completed. For our next policy here, it's the general criteria policy, and this applies to all development agreements and amendments to land use bylaws. So in summary, the criteria here are met since the proposal is not considered premature or inappropriate for the area. No municipal costs related to the proposal are anticipated, and the fire chief, development officer, manager of building and fire inspection services, area manager of Nova Scotia Department of Public Works, and Public Works Engineering Division have no concerns which have not been otherwise addressed in the report. So the requirements and details that we have within the draft development agreement are as follows. It permits a wind farm, including all associated equipment, facilities, and improvements necessary for the operation of that wind farm. It allows a total of 12 additional turbines, and there are 2 separate setbacks included with it. So there's a property line setback equal to the total height of a turbine. So that is the setback of any turbine from any property line. So that is the total height of the turbine, and a secondary setback, which is 1,000 meters from any 1,000 meters from any turbine to any dwelling, hotel, or motel, and 550 meters from any woods camp. Existing driveway access is through Ellers House Road, and operation requirements are reflected in the environmental assessment for sound level and shadow flicker. This DA also includes an extensive decommissioning fund piece as well. And for the substantive matters, we have the uses permitted on the property, including the maximum number of turbines, the minimum setback requirements, the requirements for a surface water management plan. This is equivalent to what we would call a stormwater management plan. The province just has a different name for it. And the requirements of the environmental assessment approval. We had a public information meeting on May 7th, and it was broadcast live on the municipal Facebook page. We had 12 members of the public attend, and 6 of them spoke during that meeting. The deadline for comments was May 21st, 2024, and staff received emails from 1 resident as well as 2 pieces of written correspondence in support of the development during that comment period. So just summarizing some of the comments we received, they mostly spoke to the lifespan of the turbines, stormwater management, uranium and geotechnical items, project ownership, support for the developer regarding the trail system, employment opportunities, good working relationship with the developer and community, upgrading and maintenance of the roads, and support from the developer with student bursaries. So our process up until now, we had the public information meeting on May 7th. Then staff took the application for a review and recommendation and brought that report to the Planning Advisory Committee on September 12th, 2024. It then moved on to Council's first reading on October 8th, 2024. And tonight we're at the public hearing and second reading. If approved here, a notice of approval would be placed in the paper with a 14-day appeal period to follow. And just to note, we have now met all statutory requirements for this application.
Thank you, Planner Dunphy. May 7th seems so far away, way back when, but it's amazing. You said the applicant wants to present at this point?
Yes, that's
All right.
correct.
Julie, you want to come on up and we'll give you the mic. If you can just click the button there and yep, perfect. You got the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Julia Cushing. I'm Director of Development at Potentia, and I'm here with a number of my colleagues this evening. I'll just take a moment to introduce them, and when I do, if you could just wave. So we have Jennifer Tuck. Jennifer is the Vice President of Government Relations and Communications. Sarah Palmer, Director of Environment and Community Consultation. We have Ernie Saunders, who is our Regional Manager in Nova Scotia, managing our operating facilities in the province. And we also have Angus Doan from Strum Consulting, and Strum conducted the environmental assessment for the project. And Dr. Olson, I'll have you introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors who I've seen before, and new councillors. My name is Dr. Chris Olson. I have a PhD in environmental sciences, environmental health, practicing consultant, university professor for the last 25 years. about 15 years ago, got involved in the wind industry and proper siting for ensuring public health, safety, and welfare. So I'll be speaking a little bit about that this evening and happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. So we'll start this evening by telling you a little bit about Potentia. If you could move to the next slide, please. And the next one. Thank you. So Potentia is a 100% Canadian-owned, fully integrated developer, owner, operator of renewable energy and storage assets in Canada and the US. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Power Corporation of Canada, and we currently operate over 1.3 gigawatts of electricity in Canada and the US. So what does this actually mean in terms of our wind experience in Canada? Well, we currently operate over 220 wind turbines across the country. That's about 1 gigawatt of electricity. And specifically in Nova Scotia, we operate 29 wind turbines, and that's about 44 megawatts. And Ernie here oversees all of those projects. We have 2 gigawatts in our development pipeline, and we have pretty significant financial backing. Potentia and our parent company established the Power Sustainable Energy Infrastructure Partnership Fund, which is a mouthful, so we just call it PSIP. And PSIP has over $1 billion of committed capital. And I also just want to point out that Potentia is a company that owns and operates projects for the life of the project. We're not a company that develops projects to flip them and sell them. So when we come into a community, we come in with the mindset that we plan to be here for the life of the project. Next slide, please. The Annapolis Valley First Nation is the majority owner of this project. They're located in the Annapolis Valley. And one benefit that we know they are getting through this project and they've expressed to us is really important is land access to their St. Croix Reserve. And I'll show you where the cutout is on one of the coming slides. But this is something that we've heard from them is very important to them, and it supports their traditional practices in the area. Next slide. Thank you. So AREA, the Alternative Resource Energy Authority, they're our development partner, and they'll also be the off-taker for the project, meaning they'll be purchasing electricity from the project. And we're fortunate this evening that we have the Mayor of Berwick here with us tonight, Mayor Mike Trinasti. Thank you for joining us and for your support for the project. And AREA is comprised of 3 municipalities, Berwick, Mahone Bay, and Antigonish. And together, those municipalities own AREA, and AREA owns the existing wind project just to the north of where we're proposing these turbines. That existing wind project is a 23 megawatt project comprised of 10 wind turbines. And in the year 2020, AREA conducted an RFP, and they selected Potentia as their development partner. And to date, AREA has contributed over $1 million in property taxes to West Hants and about $80,000 to the Ellerthouse Wind Farm Society. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about our project, and I know Planner Dunphy has already provided an overview, but we'll just touch on some of these points again. So our development agreement is for 12 wind turbines. At this point, we're looking to construct 6 of those turbines because our power purchase agreement with AREA will be for the electricity from 6 turbines. But as an independent power producer, if the opportunity arises to sell the electricity from the remaining 6, we would pursue that opportunity. And it's also just good project planning to have alternative locations in case the need arises, for example, following the results of the geotechnical investigations that we'll be conducting. The lands are secured through lease and easement options, and they're privately owned by a forestry company. And currently the lands are used for forestry practices and recreational activities. So we know that the area is actively used by snowmobiles, ATVs, and in conversation with, some of the cabin owners along Ponick Lake, we know that they use the area for hiking and walking. And one thing that they were pleased to hear was that they would have nicer roads to go for their walks on. And the project has achieved environmental assessment approval. We have a generator interconnection agreement. And at this point, we are targeting construction and operation in 2026. And the dates will be refined based on delivery timelines for some of the key project components like turbines and main power transformers. We know that there's about a 2-year wait to get a main power transformer at this point. So those delivery timelines will really dictate our overall project schedule. And we're also looking at the Nordex 5.9 megawatt turbine. So just to give you some idea of the size of the turbine, to the hub, it's about 125 meters. That's about 410 feet. The blades are about 80 meters long, about 261 feet. And so that's a total of about 205 meters, 671 feet. Next slide. Thank you. So as we mentioned, we submitted our environmental assessment in May of 2023. And the environmental assessment assessed impacts on various valued ecosystem components. And these included the atmospheric environment, geophysical, aquatic, terrestrial, socioeconomic environment, archaeology and cultural heritage, human health, electromagnetic interference, shadow flicker, visual aesthetics, and sound. And in July of that year, the project received its environmental assessment approval. And in the letter of approval, it was stated that any adverse effects or significant environmental effects of the undertaking could be adequately mitigated through the terms and conditions. Next slide. Thank you. So the environmental assessment approval provides us with required plans and programs that we have to put in place by specific milestones. And so prior to construction, we have to provide a detailed sediment and erosion control plan, a wildlife management plan, complaint response plan, MICMA communication plan, and a contingency plan. Prior to the road construction, we submit an updated noise and shadow flicker modeling and a surface water management plan, which is also the stormwater management plan. Prior to construction of turbines, we submit an adaptive management plan. And then prior to turbine operation, we submit our updated bird and bat acoustic studies, our bird and bat mortality monitoring program, and the mainland moose monitoring program. And both of those programs are to be conducted for at least 2 years after the start of operation. And I think it's also really important to note that in addition to these terms and conditions, any mitigation measure or commitment we make in that environmental assessment document becomes part of our approval, and we're bound to comply with what we have included in that document. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Olson.
Thanks, Julia. And again, folks, we'll just talk a little bit about the setback, sound, and shadow flicker for this project. I think as appropriate, the planners and the draft development agreement require at least 1,000 meter or 1 kilometer setback from defined as dwelling, but really permanent homes in the area, 550 meters to cabins. Those are more than sufficient to ensure protection of public health and safety from things like ice throw or blade failure or any of the catastrophic events. But just to point out for this project in particular, so the Potentia project, the Elders House 3 project, closest home's over 4 kilometers away. So what that means is by having the closest, permanent house, the dwelling in the area being 4 kilometers away, they're not going to experience any sound from the turbines, and they're not going to experience any shadow flicker. So then the next closest group that are in the area, of course, are the folks that have cabins on the east side of Panic Lake. And we met with them back when there was an open house here, I believe it was in the spring. Like you, Mr. Mayor, May seems like a long time away, but so we met with those folks, and again, they will have to abide. But so they're going to, I think the closest one is just over 600 meters away to the edge of Panic Lake there, and the cabins had good discussions with them, as Julia said. And the reality there is that they will be also having to have less than 40 decibels of sound at their cabins, whether they're there or not. If I stop talking for a second, just the hum in the background in the room, that's about 50 decibels. That's twice as loud as 40. Okay, so it's going to be a very low sound limit. Nova Scotia has one of the most stringent noise requirements in all of North America. So certainly we're not worried about them from a perspective of, getting a good night's sleep, having unwanted noise on their properties of the cabin or across the lake. And the other requirement is for shadow flicker. And so sound and shadow flicker are dictated by the province. Of course, setbacks, they have some say in, but of course you folks in your development agreement are more controlling over the setbacks. Shadow flicker, that's, the case where if, let's say, we had turbines outside the hall here, if it was daylight, it wasn't dark out yet, and you had the shadow, like the sun in a perfect direction aligned with the turbine, and if it cast a shadow over the windows, it would seem like it was slowly flickering, the intensity of light in the room. In again, here in Nova Scotia, no more than 30 hours of shadow flicker at either a home or a cabin. And certainly meet that requirement, the largest being almost just near that 30 hours. But at the end of the day, again, it doesn't take into account the trees and all of the other interruptions that would be there. Unlikely to see much in the way of shadow flicker, even at the homes or the cabins, along Panic Lake. So overall, the Eller's House 3 project is a properly cited project. I think the development agreement covers off a number of those aspects that protects the municipality, and would urge you to approve the Eller's House 3 project.
Thank you. So there are a number of benefits for the community from this project. There will be annual property taxes paid to West Hants, and we'll also be contributing $1,000 per turbine per year to the Eller's House Wind Farm Society. This will be adding to what area already contributes to the Wind Farm Society. And what's really special about this group is that this is a community-led initiative, and it's the dedicated volunteers of that group, many of whom are here this evening, who decide where that money is best spent in the community and who it can help the most. So in previous years, this money has gone towards buying new playground equipment, sponsoring summer camps and skating sessions. And the donations have also gone to the Brooklyn District Elementary School, West Hants Middle School, and Avon View High School to support their breakfast and lunch programs. There will also be employment opportunities during construction and operation. And we're also targeting to have a minimum of 40% participation of local labor in this project. And finally, this project will also contribute to the province's goal of 80% renewable energy by 2030. Next slide. So in terms of the West Hants Municipal Planning Strategy, this project has achieved environmental assessment approval. We meet the setback distances from cabins and from dwellings. The closest dwelling is about 4.4 kilometers and the closest cabin is about 660 meters. And we meet the requirements for noise and shadow flicker. In terms of visual impacts, this project is proposed in an area where there are already turbines on the landscape. It's proposed in an area where there is already industrial activity, such as forestry activities, and there's also an active quarry on the site. And so we aren't proposing to change the land use in the area. And actually further to that comment about land use, the study area is open for recreational activities. And in speaking with the landowner, they've committed to keeping the area open for these recreational activities into the future. And finally, we're proposing to implement LIDS technology. This is a lighting intensity dimming solution. And this technology works to reduce the intensity of the turbine lights in the night sky. And so we've implemented this technology at all 140 operating turbines in Alberta. And we've reached out to our operations staff and they gave us some metrics on how this technology is actually working. And at one of those projects, 90% of the time, the turbines are dimmed to 10% intensity. And finally, we'll also work with the municipality to ensure that the roads are left in the same or better condition as pre-construction. So we've worked to really form a strong relationship with the community. And we've been fortunate that we have received community support, and that's something that we don't take for granted. I think it's a real testament to the work that area has put into their existing project and to the relationship that the community and area have established. And we're committed to being a productive part of that relationship. So this year we hosted a community open house. We had a community liaison committee meeting back in May. And the Community Liaison Committee is something that started for the existing Eller's House project. It started in about 2013, and it serves as a link between the community and the project. And it should be noted that everybody is welcome to attend a Community Liaison Committee meeting. You don't have to support the project to be welcome at that meeting. And the purpose of the Community Liaison Committee is to provide an opportunity for face-to-face conversations between the project team and the community. And finally, in August, we had the opportunity to sponsor a community barbecue. And it was such a beautiful day of delicious food and live music and community spirit. And I had to include a photo of a cake that they surprised us with. It was a very beautiful day, and we were really proud to be a part of that event. And as I mentioned, we have been fortunate to receive support from the CLC, from the Ellershouse Wind Farm Society, and from the Snow Dusters. And we've also worked to establish a relationship with the planning staff and to keep them updated on conversations with community members that we've had, and with, how our development is progressing. And we look forward to continuing these relationships as the project progresses. Next slide. And so in conclusion, we respectfully request that the municipality vote to approve our project's development agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. I think at this point, we'll ask council if it has any questions of the developer before we get into public comments, and that way we can get the developer to their seats. Council, is there any questions on the project to the developer while we have them up here? Councilor Yanish.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that you're using Nordex turbines. And what type of blade pitch control mechanisms do these have? Are they electric or hydraulic?
I'm sorry, I don't have the specifics on that this evening, but I can follow up with you about that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. The second question has to do with the decommissioning and land reclamation. And a lot of the other development agreements that we've looked at, they have different requirements. And I noticed in this development agreement, there's very little information about decommissioning and land reclamation.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in the environmental assessment, it only, it's like many of the environmental assessments, they say that it can be done 2 years before decommissioning, you can come up with a plan. And I'm just wondering if you could provide us any information about your intentions when it comes to dealing with the decommissioning, and particularly the concrete and the underground wiring.
Yep.
What's going to happen with that?
Yeah, so our requirements for decommissioning are outlined in our environmental assessment and in the land lease that we have with the landowner. And so the requirements state that project components up to 3 feet below ground will be removed, and they'll either be disposed of at a landfill or recycled where possible. So, like I said, everything about 3 feet below ground will be removed, and the access roads will remain in place as it's an active forestry area and they can continue to use them.
Thank you.
And actually, may I circle back to your first question for a moment? Ernie, is that something that you can speak to?
We'll get you up here to speak into the mic there, if you don't mind, Ernie there. If you can just click that one on there and just speak right into it, so folks at home can hear the answer as well.
Yeah, so I think in that platform or turbine you're speaking about is the blade pitch system, whether it's electric or hydraulic. It's my understanding that there may be one or two, both options available for that platform. I'm not sure what. I don't think it's been noted what if it's going to be hydraulic or electric driven system. So it's definitely, we can get back to you on that though once we hear where we're going.
It'd be interesting to know. Yeah.
May I ask if there's a specific concern that you have about that?
Through you, Mayor. Most hydraulic systems, they tend to leak.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter on what piece of equipment, whether it's a turbine or a farm tractor. And there have been known to be problems with hydraulic pitch mechanisms leaking. hydraulic fluid. And so I was just interested to know what kind of a turbine you guys might be using.
To that, I would also add that as part of our condition of approval, we're required to prepare a contingency plan that deals with the possibility of spills and what we would do if there is a spill. And we do have operations staff who continuously monitor the turbines, and the turbines undergo, routine maintenance activity, just like our vehicles do. And so they're routinely out in the site monitoring. And if there is a problem, like I said, we'll have a contingency plan in place that deals with the possibility of spills.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, council, to the developer? Councillor Morton, Paul.
Just a quick question on the size of the turbines that are proposed. Are they the same as the ones that are there now, bigger, smaller?
They are larger than the ones that are currently on the site. Yeah. I actually have that written down if you'd like me to tell you the size of the existing turbine.
Sure.
I'll just need a moment to pull it up.
Councillor Leary Pinch, while Julia's pulling that up.
I was just going to make a comment that it's really nice to hear that you have the support of the local community and that you've been engaging them and working together collaboratively on this project. So I just think that helps ensure success on both ends in the end result. So that was nice to hear. Thank you.
I'm going to hold off on Councillor Ivy's questions. They're usually a little more detailed there, so I want you to pay attention to it.
Sure, okay, sorry about that.
Trying to lighten up the room, folks.
Sorry, I was expecting this question, so I included it in my notes. But the existing turbines, I'm sorry, I only have it in meters, but to the total height is about 144 meters. And the ones that we're proposing are 205, and that's to the tip of the blade. Thank you, Dr. Olson. That's 475 feet.
Thank you. Councillor Ivy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Julia and Potentia, for your presentation. My question goes to, I didn't see anything in the environmental directions that were given or within the proposal regarding blasting.
Right.
No, can you just speak to that? Because we have other projects where that is involved, and I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, so the environmental assessment document does talk about the possibility of blasting, and whether blasting is required will be determined following our geotechnical investigations. What we do know is that the project component most likely to require blasting, if blasting is required, is the turbines themselves, the turbine foundations. And so where blasting is required, we'll be conducting pre-blast surveys based on the outcome of the geotechnical investigation, if that's something that, would be required. And we'll also have a blasting plan in place that is going to be specific to where we need to do blasting and where we expect impacts to occur, and therefore what mitigation and avoidance measures will have to be put in place. And that blasting plan is something that would be submitted to the province.
Thank you very much. I didn't see it, and I don't know how I missed it, but
No, that's okay.
yeah. And because we'd gotten into a conversation about this with another one as it relates to the protection of wildlife, whether it's birds, bats, moose, and the like, and the timing of the blasting relative to the studies being done. Do you have any comment as to the timing of the studies that you would have for the wildlife in the area, the wildlife management plan, as it relates to the timing of blasting and the construction taking place?
Sure. I wonder if I could call on Strum to come up and speak to that.
Thanks, Julia. To answer your question there, to the best of my ability, a terrestrial habitat and wildlife management plan has not yet been developed and or consulted with Nova Scotia Environment, Natural Resources and Renewables, and the Canadian Wildlife Service. So we don't actually have a specific rule or regulation in place surrounding the time of the blasting. That being said, the blasting plan is governed separately than your habitat or terrestrial habitat and wildlife management plan. It is typically not addressed directly within the terrestrial habitat and wildlife management plan, and it's not something that I have experienced on other projects being addressed specifically in the terrestrial habitat and wildlife management plan.
Thank you. And that was, I guess, I don't want to cross the line here, but that was part of the discussion in a prior conversation that we had, is about the timing and the order of the events of those activities taking place. That if you start with the blasting, then your wildlife plan is done afterwards. That it's kind of in reverse order. You're not going to get a true benchmark of what's taking place within the community. So, sorry, within the wildlife environment. So, I appreciate that. And that's also provincial. I realize that as well. It's not part of.
Just wanna- Just to clarify a point, the wildlife management plan would be done in advance of construction. So we would have those studies completed and mitigation in place prior to any blasting occurring.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further questions to the developer council? All right. I'm
Ms.
going to
Avian?
open, sorry, yep,
Sorry, can I just get one more in if I
sure,
could?
yep.
It goes to the point that's within your plan regarding the fire preventative measures up within the turbines themselves. And I believe that you've got, I'll use the term active fire suppression or proactive versus passive. Can you speak to what you have up there?
Yeah, so I can speak to what we have in terms of fire detection. So the turbines themselves will come with smoke detectors or arc sensors. And if either of these systems trip, if a smoke detector detects smoke or if an arc is detected, then electricity is immediately cut from the turbines. As I mentioned, the turbines are monitored 24 hours a day. Message is sent to our operations staff who come out and inspect the turbines. And I'll also just add that in the cell of the turbine, all of the equipment is kept in sealed cabinets, and that prevents fire from spreading. It prevents arcs from opening up the doors and spreading fire. So what we have in place is a fire detection system.
Okay, thank you. We've heard terms previously about passive or non-passive. Does that fit into one of those categories, or?
I'm not sure what the definitions are of those categories.
Yeah, I struggle with them as well, which is the reason for the question to you folks.
So Councillor Harvey, again, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think typically when people talk about passive and active fire suppression systems, they are talking about either, a CO2 system or one of the like, right? Some sort of fire protection in the nacelle that goes above and beyond. What Julie's talking about is the monitoring detection. There's potentially different types of active or passive fire suppression you have there. The reality is that the reason why it's not usually employed, and I'd be shocked if any of the turbines here in Nova Scotia had either an active or a more passive system in place. And the reason why is typically what you're looking at there. In the event of a fire in the nacelle, the leading cause of fire in a turbine is actually an excessive lightning strike that goes down through the blade and isn't then just such a high voltage where most of them will be captured and then dispersed into the ground. We typically have 1 to 2 fires at most a year in Canada. Often we don't have any fires out of the 7,000 turbines across the country. So not really needed in the sense that it would, from a perspective of a risk of fire is so very low on any given year in any given turbine. On top of that, there is some concern by some of the developers, by some of the operators that, they have their guys climbing those towers on a regular basis, and that it is a confined space and not a confined space they can easily get out of course. And then if you were to have an active or passive fire detection or fire suppression system go off while the workers are up there, that would be a larger risk than a very small risk. And I think if we look at, the fact that you've got the turbines here in existence, I know the discussions have happened with the local fire chief and will continue to happen, that I just don't know that it's needed to put such a system in place.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. At this point, we're going to open it up to the public. If anybody wishes to come on up and speak on this matter, we're going to get you to come on up. One at a time. Yep. If you want to come up, Dave. Yep. If anybody wishing to speak, just come stand to the side so I'll know, and we'll get you to click the button on the mic there, Dave. State your name for the records.
Yep. My name's Dave Blanchard. I've been a lifelong resident of Eller's House. I'd just like to say a few words on the wind turbines through my experience. I've been involved basically with this since it started from day one with Harriet. And at the meetings up the hall we had out there, some were good. Well, they're all good meetings, but some got a little bit of higher than others, I might say. And Everybody has their own opinion. So I would say with the turbines that are there now, there may be 3 houses, 4 houses live closer to them than I do. And I've worked up in my wood lot, getting wood out, and I can look up like that, and I'm basically looking at them going. One of the big complaints we started on it with was all the noise. Well, I've yet to be woken up in my sleep with them. I've yet to hear any loud noise from them. Basically, all I can say is that sometimes you can hear a noise, and my best way to describe it would be if you're standing back far from the beach and the water's coming in, you hear the wave kind of rolling in. It's a soft sound, and that's what I hear. I hear a lot more noises coming from the 101 and things like that. And then too, as another part, I told people there that years ago, we used to have 6 trains a day coming through Eller's House. Now, some of you may here remember the old days of the railroad, but 2 of those trains, one went through at 10:30 at night. That's what we used to call the fast freight. And there's another one went through at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it made just as much noise. And as you know, I guess it's the rules of the railroad, whenever they come into crossings and something like that, they got to start blowing their horns. So we always had lots of noise, but it's just something that you just sleep through. You don't, once you're used to it, you really don't hear it. And then there was another question come up about when they were blasting, about putting the towers in and whatnot. Well, we have blasting out there now. We have blasting going on back at the quarry, that the stone quarry in the road there. And I don't know too many. There are some people here can remember it. I remember a few years ago when the quarries were working, you could just about set your clock at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was in Eller's House, but you would hear the bang go over in Wentworth. And that was the shift going off, blast a bunch of gypsum out for the night shift coming on. But, again, you just happen to get used to those. And just on ending, I'm going to say that the ones that have the towers out, the wind farm out there now area, you couldn't ask for a better group to work with. And it seems to be that they've trained this new one on the same lines. And we've had good response from them. And they've treated us good out in the community and everything. So thank you.
Best commercial I've ever heard, Dave. We'll get this gentleman over here first, Marcus. Mayor Trinity, I just recognized you, but we'll get you to introduce yourself as well.
So I am Mayor Mike Trinity with the town of Berwick, but I'm here representing areas, and I'm chair of the board. But also with me here today is Mayor Sean Cameron, if you want, and the Deputy Mayor of Antigonish, Diane Roberts, and the Mayor of Mahone Bay, which is with us as well, Suzanne Lotus Croft. So they're here in support of this as well. So, well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to council about area. And also, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this this community for a number of years, actually 10 years or so now. Thank you, Dave, for the intro to the whole thing, because I want to talk a little bit about that. And before I go any further, I do want to thank the former board, the mayors that are here now. We're fairly new in our spots based on the last election. So a lot of the work and success of area has been done by the previous mayors and councilors that were on that board. I do want to thank them for that. So area is a partnership of 3 towns. And you're wondering, how did those 3 towns of Antigonish, Berwick, and Mahone Bay get together on this? Well, the reason we partner with this is because we have our own electrical utilities. We're 3 out of 5 electrical utilities in the province of Nova Scotia that are owned and operated by a municipality. So that's our commonality of why we've gotten together. And the area started, it was formed in 2014, but it started prior to that with what was called the Nova Scotia Municipal Utilities Co-op. And that was a loose organization that started to look at how municipal units, utilities, can begin to generate renewable energy, can look at other supplies of energy based on what they were doing at that time. And you're probably wondering, like, how did we ever get started in Ellershouse in the first place? Like, how did Antigonish, Berwick, and Mahone Bay end up in Ellershouse? And it started actually in 2012 when the co-op was starting to talk about how we begin to look at alternate energy. What does that mean? What sources are there? So we actually put out an RFP looking for companies that would bring something forward for us to consider in those towns, in that co-op. And Minus Energy was actually the successful applicant of the RFP, and they recommended Ellershouse based on the work that they had done around wind profiling, and Ellershouse has a strong wind profile there, and also it's close to the existing hydro dam that's there now and the transmission line. So it's important for us to be able to create the power that comes from Ellershouse, but you have to put it on the transmission lines, and then you have to feed it to your municipality. So transmission lines were a real key to that. So that's how Ellershouse kind of was identified in the first place. So, and of course they identified the fact that it's a wind farm, and we've since gone beyond wind farms in our municipalities, but that's another story. We now have solar gardens as well as the wind farm. So the important piece for the municipalities, our municipal units, was to create an organization that could then manage the wind power and sell the power that was generated to each of the utilities that then put it on their grid. What was one of the main drivers of that is climate change and decarbonization. I mean, there's a big effort to do that, as we know, across the country, across the world, that we need to do. But in particular, Nova Scotia has what's called the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act, which requires at different stages for anybody that supplies energy to meet particular targets. And the targets they have is renewable energy has to come, or your supply has to come from renewable energy. By 2015, you had to have 25% come from renewable energy. By 2020, it had to be 40%. And by 2030, it has to be 80%. It has to come from renewable energy. So we're really pleased and proud to say that by 2018, with 10 turbines that are there now, and the cost is $51 million, and it creates 23.5 megawatts of energy, and it saves about nearly 70,000 tons of CO2 every year going into our atmosphere. And by January 1st, 2018, we've managed to meet that target of 40% renewable energies. And actually, our 3 towns are about 32. Berwick is a little bit higher at that time was a little bit higher at around 50% because we have our own hydro plant. And now we're crouching, Berwick, for example, would be with the solar farms, all 3 municipalities are much above the 42%. So we're really pleased to do it 2 years earlier than the target, but we're also very proud of the fact that we are the only utility in the province we're the only ones that met that goal. NSPI hasn't met that goal. The other 2 municipal units haven't met that goal. So we're the only ones in the province that have done that. So where area creates that energy through the wind turbines, we sell it to municipalities. There's a huge budget. We also sell it to Riverport Electric. They're not part of the partnership, but they're a utility that's able to accommodate the renewable energy. So the revenue of that goes to a variety of different things. It's a $5 million operating budget, and it goes to many places. Some of them have already been identified. Certainly goes a lot towards expenses, but there is a financial benefit to the towns as well, and sometimes in a dividend that comes back from area. But we're really pleased to be able to support this community as we have. So Julie's already mentioned the tax. The tax is actually called the Turbine Facility Municipal Tax. It's not a property tax, and it's based on the amount of output that you have. So at 23.5 megawatts, we provide $130,000 to the municipality of Hants West. So as the megawatt increases, the wattage increases, which it will through the potential expansion, so will the tax. In fact, it'll probably more than double to the municipality. And we've already mentioned, and we're really pleased with the support that we're able to provide to the Ellis House Wind Farm Society, which is $10,000 based on $1,000 per turbine. And they've done, and Julia mentioned, highlighted some of the things they do. But we've also supported the Ellis House Community Hall as well with upgrades there. And we're particularly pleased with the relationship we have there. In fact, we have our quarterly meetings, or perhaps even more often, at the hall. And they feed us tremendously well. We're really pleased with the food we get. And we constantly rave about the pies. And by the end of the meeting, we're really hoping that there's a few extra pieces of pie that we get to take home with us. So we want to thank the Ellis House Community Hall folks for that. That's a big piece of it. So as you've heard, the application, so for us to go further now, the approach we've taken is to partner with Potentia on this, or have them develop the next piece, of which we'll buy the energy from them and then redistribute it to each of our municipal units. And we're really hoping that, well, the expectation is for us that we will reach the 80% target through Potentia by earlier than 2030. And perhaps we'll even have some additional renewable energy available that we can provide to others and help the rest of the province meet that target as well, and help decarbonize. I mean, so we're 3 small towns trying to do our best to decarbonize and identify renewable energies, and we're really pleased with what we've done. And we really hope that you'll support the application by Potentia, and we can move forward on reaching our target in 2080. And we're really looking forward to bringing potential partners with us to Ellis House, and I'm sure they'll enjoy the pie as much as we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Second best commercial I heard tonight, and vice versa. So, but just a special thanks to all the partners in area. The Ellis House Hall does benefit quite a bit from your units and the project. So just a thanks from us as a community on behalf of them as well. So it's a huge help to them. Come on up, Marcus. We'll get you to state your name for the record there, and you have the mic.
Good evening, Mark Keogh from Upper Vaughan. I didn't plan to speak tonight, but I did speak before. I really appreciate the presentation with this project. I would have clapped, but I didn't want to, perhaps somebody else here that was having issues with it, I didn't want to step on their toes. So like I said, I wasn't going to speak. I did see a gentleman 2 rows in front of me that I have a lot of respect for, Mr. Michael Bryan. He's done more for hunting in Hants West than anyone with hunter education, conservation, and the entire hunting community. So it got me thinking about hunting. I hear a lot about the Snow Dusters. They're a great snowmobile club, and you spoke to recreation, but perhaps a larger a group of people that recreate on that property are hunters. And historically, the landowner has been very kind to hunters. He's a friend of hunters, and he's allowed them to use that property. The installation of these structures do create a problem for hunters, though. Deer hunters, for instance, can't hunt within 402 meters of one, which creates a 804 meter circle around the entire structure, each one. My question is, they can hunt if you give them permission. If you give hunters permission to be within that distance of those structures, they wouldn't have to worry about it. So I guess my question is, is there any thought or willingness to provide something for the hunting community so they can continue to hunt Ponic Lake? I know you're mispronouncing to get there, but up at Ponic Lake, I'm curious if there's something you can do, because a lot of those cabins that are getting these giant, they're all hunters as well. They utilize that land for hunting. So anything you could do, you don't have to answer that today. But I would like, to put some thought into it. If you can offer the hunters anything so they don't have to be out there trying to figure out all these little corridors and circles and that they can still utilize the property like they have for hundreds of years. So that would be good.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Come on up, Barb. Are you the creator of the pies we keep on hearing about?
We try.
We have a nice table over there that has lots of space on it, just for your FYI.
I just want to reaffirm I'm saying the privileges that area has given Ellershouse community. And Julia had talked about some of the ways we use the money. It started with 6,000 and we did delegate a third of that for insurance for the cemetery, the church, and the community hall. And then we delegated out things. When they built and I'll go to a question a gentleman asked about when you're tearing down. When they finished the first 6, there was a cleanup. And they must have taken everything where it belonged, because Brooklyn District got a 5,000 plus check for what they earned from their cleanup. And then they built 4 more turbines, and they gave us the extra 4,000 plus the 10,000 that year. So that was the year we gave monies to the middle school and the elementary school for their playground equipment, because it was so outdated, it had to be replaced. And we continue to do that. We provide we have an emergency fund, and we have helped 2 or 3 families, one that was burnt out, and one that needed repairs on their home so they could get in and out. And all of this, we do mailings, we do barbecues, we keep the community informed, we keep them involved. We help the rink, we help the fire department, and we've given money for the seniors bus. So we try to share it out. When we have in a camp for music or crafts or whatever, we do say in the application, it's Ellershouse people will be considered first. We never really have it filled, and we always take in people, children from other communities to do that sort of thing. And what has really helped is that because we have this extra money, we can spread ourselves a little further, and we created a comfort zone knowing that we can keep that running, and with help from council and help from us. Actually, with this year, we've been given a freezer, and we're going to buy meats to have in the freezer, that in case of power outage, we have meat on hand, and would assume people will bring their own vegetables and whatever. If we don't need it, we will have a community supper. So we've worked to spread it out, and because of this, we have created a green space behind our church. So we really have a section of hall, park, church, and it's being used by people. And the roof is going on this week. So once we get the next development done, I think that it will be an asset to have West Hants. And so again, what area has helped Ellershouse, but has helped West Hants as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Anybody further in the public wishing to speak? Come on up, Dougie. We're going to get you to state your name just for the record there.
Hi, I'm Dougie Ross. I'm with the Hand Snow Dusters. Thanks for the shout out, Mark. Great organization. We're probably the largest trail user in the county, not just West Hants. We've had a great working relationship with Area over the years. We use, well, it's actually Wagner land, but we have to work with Area on using the trails and building the trail systems through that area. And it's been a good working relationship with them, and we're hoping to have another good working relationship as we continue through back. But yes, it's just been great working with the landowners, and it's been good for the area. We keep one of our groomers out there at the substation. They have security system on, so we don't have to worry so much about that. And that's about it, I guess.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody further wishing to speak on this matter? Yep, come on up. We'll get you to state your name for the record there.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon. My name's Ian Johnstone. I work for Wagner Forest. I'm the general manager for that group. I'm based out of Truro, but we have a lot of staff not too far from Ellis House, actually. A couple of people just live down the road. Just a couple comments. The wind farms are very compatible with forest management. They build great roads for us that we can use year round for eternity, even after they leave. So it's very compatible. Relative to the area that we have, the lands there, the wind turbines don't take up a lot of space. So the footprint is very small. It's very compatible with the uses that we have. And that, as people have mentioned, the other wind farm has been there forever. We have an open lands policy on our lands as long as people continue to respect our lands, and they have in this area. Interesting to note that this Ellis House piece of ground is probably our busiest piece of land for passive recreation, hunting and fishing. And we encourage that. We're all hunters and fishers ourselves, and we encourage that. And as long as people continue to respect the land, it'll stay open. Yeah, it's interesting to note as well that that wind farm has been there for almost 10 years. I don't think we've ever had a complaint. Occasionally we shut the gates, have to do that in the past occasionally, but for the most part, they're open year round, and continues to be open to the public. And hopefully it'll continue with the next generation of wind farm that shows up. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody further wishing to speak on this matter? You need no introduction, but we'll still get you to state your name for the record.
Well, I'm bright anyway. A few people know who I am, I guess. My name is Michael Bryan, president of the Hants West Wildlife Association. There's probably not very much in the way of outdoors that doesn't come through the Hants West Wildlife Association. So my concerns actually are just to raise a few questions with the company, I guess, and to give some thought. Conservation is not a European term. It was invented in North America. And so projects such as this take away from a lot of things. You're going to build roads and things like that. We have to make sure that our riparian zones around the lakes and streams and rivers are protected, because that's the only thing that filters the water we all have to use. You cannot have fresh water unless it gets filtered. We are in a climate change in which there's a lot of dryness taking place. I mean, by rights, we should all be wearing pretty heavy clothing at this time of the year. I just come off the fields wearing most of this stuff. Mind you, this is a clean shirt compared to the one that I just had on, but that's beside the point. But the point is, at this time of the year, many people that had woodlots would be getting their heavy equipment ready to do the winter, harvesting of forest products. I don't know if there's too many forest products that could drive into some of the woodlands there we got right now without sinking into the mud. I can remember a time, and most are in my age group, in which you'd have a foot of snow in the woods by now, and it would be frozen solid. So that's what those riparian zones are important for. It's not just to minimize runoff, but to make sure that runoff gets absorbed into the water. When I looked at that screen and I saw things like 150 jobs for construction, that's great. But there's only what, maybe 4 or 5 technicians that are necessary to run it. 2 years ago, Nova Scotia had a forest fire that equaled that you'd see out west. What would happen in this place if a major forest fire took place? Can you actually dump water on those turbines? That I don't know, because that could be a possibility. Can the municipality actually have the resources to go into a place like that? Or should that company, you guys, do what the Department of National Defense does on the Magazine Hill? They have their own fire department. You might have to consider doing that, or have trained firefighters of your own ready to put something out right away. Because if a fire takes place in a dry period of time, by the time you got into the woods, I know I fought a couple. It just gets away just like that. No problems at all. So those are concerns you have to think about, because wood roads are wood roads. Doesn't matter how well built they are. You still got to get into the woods. Okay. Now, when you talk about the mainland moose and all that, what you're actually creating is more of a habitat for white-tailed deer. Well, we got a lot of white-tailed deer right now. They're all over the place. Mainland moose need more heavier country. We only have 1,000 in the whole province of Nova Scotia. That's it. 1,000 animals, the whole province. So making sure that you leave some heavier cover, real heavier stuff, real woods is important for these animals. Those are the kind of things that we all have to think about from time to time. I'm not against anything green. What I'm against for is just unplanned things that sometimes one has to wonder, is West Hants going to be the dumping ground for wind farms in Nova Scotia? We have a lot of areas of large crown land. We also have a lot of areas of large privately owned land. How many more do we need? Your project seems to be a little bit different than the other one. Okay. The other one, the Everwind one, which just wants to take electricity out of here. And hopefully somewhere down the line, they build some kind of weird plant.
We're going to stick
Yes, I
to
know.
this one here tonight, Mike.
That
Sorka.
doesn't, no, it's just that it's just the whole thing's like a pie in the sky. Okay, so this here should go back into the grid. Am I right on that? A lot of it? Okay. That has benefits to all Nova Scotians, okay? My only other concern before I leave here, except on the environmental side, of course, is where does all that fit in the national programs? And we have a government in the United States that is not environmentally friendly. The one coming in now, in another month's time, he's already ready to slap a 25% tariff on all of us, okay? And we have a federal government that's running around in circles. We know that. Whether or not you can be taxed or not is another thing. It depends, I guess, on what Mr. Trump and his colleagues consider to be an export. Okay, because America, of course, has got to be part of this system too. So there's all these concerns you got to take into place. Anyway, you're a new council. I wish you luck and all that stuff. That's about all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody further wishing to speak on the matter? All right. Anything to add on your end, Alex, before we conclude the public hearing?
We did have a letter that was submitted. And maybe I'll get Deanna to read that out if she's able to.
Oh, you want to pass her your mic there, Alex? Sorry.
Correspondence received November 22nd, 2024. Dear Mayor Zabian and Council, I am writing today regarding Eller's 3 Wind LP's development agreement that is scheduled to appear before Council for a public hearing and second reading on November 26, 2024. The Eller's 3 Wind project, is being developed by Eller's 3 Wind LP, an affiliate of Potentia Renewables Incorporated. Potentia, and its power will be sold to the Alternative Energy Resource Authority area. Area is 100% municipally owned utility comprised of 3 Nova Scotia municipalities, Mahone Bay, Antigonish, and Berwick. Collectively, the towns own and operate the Eller's 1 and 2 wind farms in West Hants. Completed in 2018, the Eller's Wind Farm pays $100,000 annually in tax to West Hants, $500,000 to date, and $10,000 annually to the Eller's Wind Farm Society, $50,000 to date. Area's donations to the Eller's Wind Farm Society have provided new playground equipment, sponsored summer camps, sponsored skating sessions, and provided donations towards the Brooklyn District Elementary School, West Hants Middle School, and Avon View High School to support their breakfast and lunch programs. Both Area and Potentia have significant experience as responsible renewable energy developers, owners, and operators of wind projects in Canada. The project will result in direct benefits to the local community through increased property taxes, job creation opportunities for local businesses, and infrastructure investments. In addition to Area's involvement in the Eller's 3 Wind project, the majority owner of the project is the Annapolis Valley First Nations, AVFN, who will benefit economically from the project as well as gain access to the St. Croix Reserve. Currently, the main access point to the St. Croix Reserve is from Ponick Lake. The AVFN's partnership in this project will result in a key point of land access to the reserve lands, which currently border the project boundary. We respectfully urge the Mayor and Council to allow the Eller's 3 Wind project to proceed to hearing and second reading at the upcoming Municipal Council meeting on November 26th. Time is of the essence to ensure the project can meet its obligations to deliver clean, renewable energy to the Nova Scotia grid. Delaying this process could impact the ability to these 3 municipalities to provide sustainable power to their communities. We strongly encourage Council to adhere to the planning timeline, allowing us to advance this project and deliver its benefits without delay. Should you have any questions or should you wish to set up a call, we would be pleased to discuss this matter further. Regards, Mike Trinasti, Mayor Mike Trinasti, Town of Berwick, Chair, Area Alternative Resource Energy Authority.
Thank you very much, Clerk Snare. Anything further on your end, Planner Dunphy? All right, perfect. With that, Council, we're going to conclude this public hearing. We will resume the Council meeting now. We do have a recommendation as part of your report. There it is up there. If somebody wishes to make that, we can begin discussion, debate amongst Council. Councilor Yanish.
Thank you, Your Worship. Move that Council gives second reading and approves entering into a development agreement to allow a wind farm on PIDs 454-07194, 454-07202, 454-07210, 454-07228, 454-07244, 454-07251, 454-07269, 454-07277, 454-07285, 454-07178, 454-07236, 454-07152, 454-07160, 454-07186, and a portion of PIDs 454-07137 and 454-07145, which is substantively the same as the draft set out in Attachment B of the report file 21-16 to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee dated September 12th,
2024.
Geez, some of us see sugar plum fairies in our sleep. We'll be seeing 4, 5s, and 7s in our sleep tonight, Councillor Yanish. Motion made by Councillor Yanish. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Morton. Paul, questions, comments, debate? Councillor Ivy.
Thank you, Chair. The one point I guess that I would like to draw council's attention to, and we've talked about it on many occasions for virtually every development agreement that we have, and it's come up in previous projects similar to this one, and in some cases there were notations regarding pre and post storm development flows. And so the reason for raising this is, and I've commented this at a previous meeting, I don't think it's acceptable anymore that we set the pre and post development flows to be equal or better. I think it's time that we say that they need to be better. And better is, it's a small number in the scheme of things. It doesn't take, if you're going to set a target to be equal or better, to be better isn't going to be that much further, quite frankly. The reason that I raise it within this development agreement is that the wording in this, and I believe it might be a typo, but I think there's a time for us to actually take a position given what we have for inland flooding risk. That is probably one of the greatest risks that we have throughout our region. The wording in the development agreement for section 2.8 is that the peak flows leaving the project area are equal to pre-development flows for a 1 in 5 year storm. Normally that wording would be equal to or better. And I think it's time that we suggest that the wording on that statement be better than. And again, unless somebody is able to tell me that's going to be a significant hardship for anybody involved in this project, which I don't think it is. I don't think it's that difficult to have it that the storm flows are improved compared to what they are now, that I think that's something that we should consider as an amendment to attachment B, which is the draft development agreement that's in front of us. The wording that it be equal to cannot stand on its own. I don't think it's got to be equal or better at a minimum. And I think it's time that we suggest that the storm flows for post-development be better than pre-development. I put that out for comment amongst council and see what others may think about that.
All right. Further discussion, comments on this proposal? Councillor Yanish.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I was going to bring up another point. I have to put some more thought into the stormwater issue, but it actually, maybe it ties into a concern I have, and which relates to concerns that have been brought up through the entire community regarding the question about how many wind farms is enough, how many wind farms are too many. And I believe that although this project seems to stand well on its own, I think that as we're moving forward, there needs to be a broader discussion involving the province, the wind farm industry, municipalities, and landowners, and trying to decide, how many wind farms in a given area or how many turbines in a given area is appropriate. The question keeps coming up. There's no guidance coming from the province, and I think it's really important that there would be a body set up, provincial body, with representatives from all the different interest groups to try and tackle these types of problems and issues of how many turbines in one area is appropriate. And I just thought it was, I'm ready to support this project, but I think it's also an opportunity to look at the larger picture and discuss whether more consultation on a provincial level, more regulations perhaps would be appropriate.
Thank you very much. Further discussion, comments, council? We do have a motion that's been made, seconded. If I don't see any more lights. Councillor Ivy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll add comment to Councillor Yanish's regarding a discussion or a plan or a review, which we've sort of in a different way been looking at over the course of the last year and a bit when we were dealing with the setbacks. And that was the key question that continued to come up in that. And even in preparing for discussion on this file this evening and the one that's yet to come this evening, it's the same question that continues to come up, and we haven't gotten to that key point as to when will we have enough within this area. As it relates to this initiative, which is, as has already been said, unique in the tremendous relationship that exists within the community in which these wind turbines are being housed, that it's a very positive relationship. And isn't that a wonderful thing to see, that if all the files that came across our desk could be this easy, we'd be getting out of here at probably more reasonable hours of the night. So that being said, I think we still do need to get to that, to Councillor Yanish's point. We do need to determine that as it relates to what's going to happen in West Hants overall, because as we start drawing those circles for setback distances, it will be affected. So I do support that comment. I do support this initiative, but I do feel that underneath the section 2.8 of the draft development agreement, that section on pre-development peak flows for a 1 in 5 year storm needs to be more clear. As I said, there's a fallback on that it could be that are equal to or better. But I'm going to suggest, in fact, I'm going to put forward a motion. We'll see where that flies. So an amendment to the motion. I don't know how I'm going to get this to fit in for attachment B, the file. I said with an amendment to the statement in section 2.8 of the stormwater management plan, in which the surface water management plan must confirm that post-development peak flows leaving the project area are better than pre-development peak flows for a 1 in 5 year storm event.
Okay, there's a motion to amend the motion on the screen. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Morton Bob. So that one reads, and I didn't get every word, Councillor Ivy there. So section 2.8 of the development agreement, putting in the wording that better than. Am I correct?
Thank you, Paul. That's not part of the motion. Peak flows leaving the project area are less than. Sorry, I'll just go back. So it's going to be that post-development peak flows leaving the project area are less than pre-development peak flows for a 1 in 5 year storm.
Okay, motion's been made, seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Nothing? All right, question's been called. We'll put that vote on the screen for the amendment. Motion is passed. Thank you very much. So we have the original motion back to it with the amendment made. Is there further discussion on that? Question's been called. Let's put the motion up on the vote on the screen. Clerk Snare. Motion's passed. Thank you very much, everybody. We have a part 2 in that report. If we can get that second part up, Clerk Snare, Planner Dunphy. And that's it there. Councillor Yanish.
Move that council requires that the development agreement with Ellers House 3 Wind Limited Partnership, Wagner Forest, Nova Scotia Limited, and Atlantic Star Forestry Limited for PIDs 454-07194, 454-07202, 454-07210, 454-07228, 454-07244, 454-07251, 454-07269, 454-07277, 454-07285, 454-07178, 454-07236, 454-07152, 454-07160, 454-07186, and a portion of PIDs 454-07137 and 454-07145 be signed within 120 days from the date of final approval by council or the date that any appeals have been disposed of. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Moved by Councillor Yanish.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Leary Pinch. Further discussion on the motion.
Just wonder if
Councillor
you could
Morton.
repeat that again.
You stop it. All right, with that, we'll put the vote up on the screen there. Motion is passed. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, our next public hearing is in regards to Highway 1 Falmouth, PID 4502-6820. Can I have a motion to go into public hearing, council? Moved by Councillor Morton Paul, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those in favor, we'll do it by show of hands. All those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed, motion is passed. Thank you very much. So development agreements, council, are required by Part 8 of the Municipal Government Act. These hearings give a chance for the public and the applicant to discuss the project in its entirety. When the public hearing is complete, council meeting will resume and council will then make questions, ask comments, or have debate. Planner Dunphy.
Thank you, Mayor. So we'll just use the same public hearing agenda here that we used for the last one. The only exception here is that we don't have a presentation from the applicant tonight. So we received a completed application from Dinko Chronolic on June 17th, 2024. And the application here was to allow a takeout cafe to be located within an existing residential building. So here we can see a sketch of the development proposal. So the parking area just off of the driveway, the existing building indicated here with the civic addressing point on it, and the cafe is in this hashed mark here. So looking at the ortho photo of the property, we can see that the property currently has an existing residential dwelling with a home-based business within it, as well as a garage. Some nearby properties consist of low-density residential, a coffee roaster, auto parts shop, and farmland. So the designation, as per the generalized future land use map, here is the residential designation. It's also important to note that this is within the Falmouth Growth Center as well. And that is the same for all of the surrounding properties as well. It's a little difficult to see, but they are all within the residential designation and the Falmouth Growth Center. Looking at the zoning, we've got a pretty clear divide here. The current property is within the single unit residential zone. This permits single unit dwellings, and much of the properties to the south and west are also within this zone. We have one highway commercial use, that is the coffee roaster and auto parts store to the southeast of the subject property, and some farmland, that agricultural priority 3 zone to the top right. That's the large green area. So here we can see a view of the subject lot from Highway 1. So this would be one of the entrances to the proposed use. And here we can see some of the surrounding area on Highway 1. So on the top image, you can see some of the residential uses on the left-hand side. And on the bottom image, we can see that commercial use as well as some of the farmland sort of mid-picture as well as off to the left-hand side of that bottom picture. So the policies that we looked at for this application, the first one we have here is 5.4.6. This enables council to consider new local commercial uses in growth centers outside of the commercial designation by development agreement. In summary, the criteria here are met since the adjacent residential area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. The draft development agreement requires sufficient parking and buffering, and the draft development agreement requires all necessary maintenance for the proposed use. Next on to our general criteria policy, which is 16.3.1. In summary, the criteria here are met since the proposal is not considered premature or inappropriate for the area. No municipal costs related to the proposal are anticipated, and the fire chief, development officer, manager of building and fire inspection services, area manager of the provincial public works department, and the public works engineering division have no concerns which have not otherwise been addressed in the report. So looking at the details of our draft development agreement, it permits a restaurant within the existing residential use. The driveway access will be from Highway 1 as indicated on the site plan. A minimum of 6 parking spaces are to be provided on site. We have some buffering requirements for the outdoor parking area from any abutting properties. There's also screening provisions of outdoor garbage storage. And lastly, we have the hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. Those aren't the hours of the business. Those are just what are permitted to be, so that those won't be the actual hours that the business will be open. For our substantive matters, we have 2, the first being the uses permitted on the property, and the last being an increase in the total floor area of the restaurant to exceed 1,000 square feet. So it can't go above that 1,000 square feet. For our public information meeting that was held in July on the 16th, and it was broadcast live on the municipal Facebook page. No members of the public attended the public information meeting, and the deadline for comments was July 30th. We received no correspondence during that comment period. So our process to date, we had, of course, the public information meeting in July. Then it went on for staff to review, and we brought a review and recommendation report to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee in September. It then moved on to council's first reading on October 8th. And tonight we are at the public hearing and second reading. If approved here, a notice of approval would be placed in the paper with a 14-day appeal period to follow. And just noting that all statutory requirements have now been met for this file. So that's the end of my presentation. So I'll hand it over to the mayor at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Dunphy. So the applicant is not here, not wishing to present. All right. Questions from council to Planner Dunphy on this file at this point? Anything from council? Anybody in attendance wishing to speak on this file? Nobody at all? All right. Anything submitted written? No comment. All right. With that, council, we'll conclude this public hearing. We'll resume the council meeting at this point. We do have a couple of recommendations there that were in your package. That's the first one. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make the recommendation. Council gives second reading and approves entering into a development agreement to allow a restaurant within a portion of the existing residential dwelling on PID 450-26820 at 1809 Highway 1 in Falmouth, which is substantively the same as the draft set out in attachment B of the report, file number 24-17, to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee, dated September 12th, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Smith. Is there a seconder? seconded by Councillor Leary Pinch. Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Smith, you got your light on or? No. Question's been called. If we can put the vote up on the screen, Clerk Snare. Motion's passed. Thank you very much, everybody. We do have a part 2 to that.
Be as quick as Deanna getting the slides up, but.
There we go. Councillor Smith.
I'll make the motion. Thank you. That council requires that the development agreement with Alma Canolic, which permits a restaurant within a portion of the existing residential dwelling on PID 450-26820 at 1809 Highway 1 in Falmouth, be signed within 120 days from the date of final approval by council or the date that any appeals have been disposed of. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Leary Pinch. For the discussion. No, question's been called. Councillor Smith, Councillor Leary Pinch, it kind of rhymes well, eh? Think blows the boat there, Clerk Snare? No? Gross. All right, so we're gonna go to a show of hands, councillors. Sorry for that. All those in favor, signify by hands up. Opposed? Motion is passed unanimous. Thank you very much. All right. Next up, 439 Clifton Avenue Development Agreement. Public Planning Heritage Advisory Committee recommendations. Planner Dunphy.
Thank you again, Mayor. Okay. So here we have our first reading for 439 Clifton Avenue for a development agreement. An application was received from Astha Patel of Brighter Community Planning on behalf of the owner, Sarah Larish, on August 12th, 2024. And this application was to allow the conversion of the interior of an existing single unit dwelling and a detached garage to accommodate 8 residential dwelling units by development agreement. So here we can see the site plan for the development proposal, and this is to allow up to 8 total units, 7 within the main single unit dwelling and 1 within the detached garage. So this also includes some additional parking. So in this case, they're providing 12 total, and that is meeting or exceeding what's required by the land use bylaw. So as stated previously, on the property, we have a large single unit dwelling and detached garage. Some of the nearby uses include a variety of residential uses. This includes some high density units to the north, as well as some lower density to the east and west, or sorry, east and south. As well, we have the Clifton Avenue or Clifton Museum Park located to the west across Clifton Avenue. The property is designated residential on the generalized future land use map for Windsor. This is the same as all of the residential uses surrounding this. And then, of course, we have the community use designation, and that's the parklands over here on the western portion. So that green section. For the zoning, this property, as well as some of the surrounding properties to the east and south, are all single unit residential. As indicated previously, there are some high density residential R4 zone to the north and some open space zones to the west. And again, that is the parkland. Here we can see a view of the subject lot from Clifton Avenue. The access to the subject lot is actually off of Alexander, so that's the street on the right-hand side of this image. And here we can see a view of the surrounding uses on Clifton Avenue. So the image on the left are those higher density residential units, and they are neighboring the subject lot through a rather dense tree line. And then the image on the right shows some of the lower density residential units. So for the policies we considered during this application, we'll start with policy 5.4.6. This enables council to consider the conversion of existing buildings to multiple unit residential dwellings of 3 units or more in the residential designation by development agreement. In summary, the criteria here are met since the proposal will not change the built form and the existing buildings meet the current zone setback requirements. The proposal is considered compatible with adjacent land uses. The development officer, manager of building and fire inspection services, and municipal traffic authority have no concerns which have not otherwise been addressed in this report. Next, we'll move to the general criteria policy 16.3.1. Again, here, the criteria are met since the proposal is not considered premature or inappropriate for the area. No municipal costs related to the proposal are anticipated, and the fire chief, development officer, manager of building and fire inspection services, public works engineering division, and municipal traffic authority have no concerns which have not otherwise been addressed in the report. Looking at the details within our draft development agreement, it permits up to a total of 8 dwelling units within the existing building. So that being the current single unit dwelling as well as the detached garage. Setback requirements are consistent with the single unit residential zone. So that's the current zoning of the property. Driveway and pedestrian access is from Alexander Street, not Clifton in this case. A minimum ratio of vehicle parking space per dwelling unit is to be provided at a ratio of 1 to 1. This proposal exceeds this value. And there are also buffering requirements for the parking areas. There's only one substantive matter in this development agreement, and that is the uses that are permitted on the property. For our public information meeting that was held on September 4th, and the meeting was broadcast live on the municipal Facebook page. One member of the public attended the public information meeting, and the individual asked about the timing and the tenancy of the proposal. The deadline for comments was September 18th, and we received no written submissions during the public comment period. So our process up until now, our public information meeting was in September. We went, staff performed a review of the application and brought a review and recommendation report to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee in November. And now we're at council's first reading. Following this, we'll move on to the public hearing and second reading in January. And if approved at that point, notice of approval would be placed in the paper with a 14-day appeal period to follow. That brings us to the end of my presentation. So I'll pass it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blair Dunphy. There is a recommendation up on the screen, Council. Before we do get to that, are there any questions on the report or any clarification items that anybody needs before we get to the motion? Councilor Ivey.
I'm glad to read the motion there, Your Worship. Seeing
right.
no, if we're
All right. Seeing nobody else? Yep.
Yeah, okay. The council gives first reading and will hold a public hearing to consider entering into a development agreement to allow the conversion of the existing single unit dwelling and accessory garage to accommodate up to 8 total dwelling units on PID 450-49921 at 439 Clifton Avenue in Windsor, which is substantively the same as the draft set out in attachment B of the report, file 24-21 to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee, dated November 14th, 2024.
Moved by Councilor Ivey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Francis. Further discussion on the motion. Question has been called. Want to try it there, Clerk Snare? Nope. All right, we'll do a show of hands again. All those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed? Motion is passed unanimous. Thank you very much. We do have a part 2 Planner Dunphy.
That council requires that the development agreement with Dave and Sarah LaRiche, which permits the conversion of the existing single unit dwelling and accessory garage to accommodate up to 8 total dwelling units on PID 4504-9921 at 439 Clifton Avenue in Windsor, be signed within 120 days from the date of final approval by council or the date that any appeals have been disposed of. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Moved by Councillor Ivy, seconded by Councillor Morton. Paul, for discussion on the motion. Question's been called. All those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed? Motion is passed unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Planner Dunphy. Get an early night. You're smiling. It's good. All right, folks, we have nothing under unfinished business, postponed motions. I'll get to the mayor's report before we do take a break there. It'll be almost 8 o'clock at that point. So again, with the timing of everything in our last meetings and stuff, I think I've missed a couple of things that I've been involved in, but I'm going to give a quick summary. I was honored to be part of the Medal of Bravery ceremony, the provincial Medal of Bravery ceremony, and one of our residents and was awarded the medal posthumously, and that would have been Nicholas Holland for his act of bravery during the 23 floods, saving his attempt to save other victims and really going above and beyond. So his partner Michelle Stewart was there to accept the medal, and it was an honor to be there to witness that. Just kudos to the community development department on this year's Halloween scavenger hunt. I think around 230 participants. It grows every year, council. Those events that you support through budget deliberations are important to our community, and a lot of people they really do enjoy them. So kudos to councils and kudos to community development on that. Was part of or attended the PIM, the public info session for 411 King. Quite a few people were here in attendance to give their thoughts and opinions on the development before it comes before this council at some point in the near future, I'd say. Birthplace of Hockey, another success. Our local View team was runners up to this year's tournament. They played their heart out, and congratulations to all who took part. Legion's Veterans Banner unveiling was another success. I think they have over 140 banners within the community now, and they put on a beautiful Remembrance Day ceremony and an evening for those who were being honored this year. So we're fortunate to have many people and many organizations in the community who give back and who honor and do things that make a difference and build the inspiration that we are known for. Congratulations to Lisa Hines on her retirement from General Manager for the Agricultural Society, and congratulations to Sherry, who's taken over. The society is doing really well, and there's some really exciting stuff in the near future for them. So we'll see where it goes. Had another sit-down meeting with the Smiley delegation from Toronto. So if some of you may recall, about 1.5 years ago, fielded a cold call to that organization, and they ended up coming down to our community and taking a look. Actually, they've been throughout the valley now, and they decided on West Hants to settle 10 families here in our community. 3 will be arriving as early as this spring. Lots of investments coming in with them, and all have accepted positions with very strong companies within our area, and filling some badly needed job vacancies. So success all around on that end. Staff appreciation again was a great hit this year. It was a night of fun, laughs, and some good discussion. I won't air any skeletons here, CIO Phillips, but CAO, Vanessa Lake, Tina McKay, all celebrating 5 years with us. Ryan Parker with his 10-year of service. Troy Burgess, who's here with us this evening, 15 years, and Rhonda Mont, 30. So a lot of dedicated employees. I just want to highlight them tonight, and we really do appreciate everything you guys do. So thank you very much for that. This past weekend, the Christmas Parade, or Santa Parade of Lights, I think it was one of our biggest ever, attendance-wise, float-wise. Residents really loved it. Sunday night was a huge hit. So weather, while it was bad for Saturday, I think it worked out in the end for the community. NSFM Fall Conference kind of started today. Kickoff was really tomorrow for the next 3 days. So I think some of you may have signed up for that. There's some really good presentations, some information. So if any of you have a chance to stop by at any point, I highly recommend it. It's a great learning experience. Lots of residents meetings again this last month and a half. Council development agreements, development in general, council priorities going forward, and grants were the main topics of discussions lately. Residents they're engaged. They're very interested in all of our work. Every opportunity you have, go to your individual districts, gain the knowledge, bring it back to us, because there's a lot of chatter going around everywhere, and it just helps the whole group understand each and every district. Because if we're going to be making decisions based on the region, it's important that we all know and hear the updates from each community. So I'm going to give you guys lots of opportunities coming up to fill us in on your districts as well. So I'm going to leave it at that, very high level summation. And if there's any questions, we'll take them now before we go on break. All right, with that, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll be back 8:11. All right.